All right. Well, I am glad you made it to part two. I promise it gets better and better. But I feel like this story of me and how I got here will, you know, help you guys understand why I am doing this, why I have this channel, um, why I feel like I am in any position to teach you anything. And just also, I just want you to be able to relate to me on whatever level you can because I'm just a human. I'm just a girl. I'm just a photographer living in Oklahoma City that, decided to chase her dreams and make the changes that I needed to find the happiness that God had waiting for me all this time that I just didn't know at the time. So, part two of this is about the changes that I made in my life and how I actually started my photography business and, started building it to what it is today. So, part three is going to be where I am now. But this part two is really about the journey in those first few years of my photography business and just of me, uprooting my life and starting a new one back here in Oklahoma. So I had left Texas and I was back here in Oklahoma and I finished that oil and gas job and I was like, what now? What am I going to do? I don't know. So, whenever I first moved back, I stayed with my sister for a while, and that was kind of a full circle moment too, because I had kind of helped her on her journey prior to that, getting through college and helping with my niece and all that. And so she was happy to let me stay with her and kind of return the favor when I moved back to Oklahoma. So I stayed with her for about 6 months, and I knew that I wanted to be stable still. I was not ready at that time when I was 30 to go for photography full time. I had just been dabbling in it. I had just been shooting part time and always had a day job. So the idea of just moving back to Oklahoma, uprooting my whole life and starting anew, and then also, just going for photography full time when I had no idea what I was doing, it was too scary for me to do at the time. So I was very lucky and I had a lot of great contacts still at Chesapeake because I had a lot of great years there. And so they were happy to have me back and I started working there again, back in the oil and gas industry. And I was just on that same wheel. And immediately I started feeling like, okay, this is safe. It is paying my bills but I do not want to be on this hamster wheel my whole life. I don't always want to be, working for someone and, just doing something that wasn't like fulfilling me and just like filling that creative void that I had, especially since I was starting photography and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love this so much. I love shooting. I love how creative I get to be. I love editing. I love the artistic side of it. So I was doing this day job in oil and gas and then shooting nights and weekends still, or evenings and weekends still. And I knew I had to kind of figure out something long term, but I was still figuring everything out. I had literally just gotten divorced and I moved back to Oklahoma starting all over essentially at 30, no kids. And I just felt like I was already like really late to the game and I did everything a really backwards kind of untraditional way. And, I still kind of felt just a little lost, but at the same time, I felt a big peace about where my life was headed. And I knew I was in the right direction just by simply making that huge change in my life and leaving something that was so unhappy. So I was doing that day job and then shooting evenings and weekends. And then I was part of a layoff. And that was like the big change for me. It was almost like God was nudging me, telling me, like, this day job, this oil and gas job, this is not like for you. This is not what you should be doing. It's not making you happy. But, in my mind, I'm just like, I need to be safe. I need to be secure. I grew up poor. I don't want to be poor anymore. I need a good job. I need a steady job. I need something that I can depend on. And photography was just kind of like an unknown territory for me as far as making it a full business. I just love doing it for the artistic side of it. And I'd never relied on it to pay any bills, so it was like scary. But I was part of the layoff, and so I had 3 months of severance pay. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this 3 months. I'm going to figure out exactly what I want to do and make a plan. So um, during this same time, when I was like in this 3 months of my severance and I was just trying to figure out my life, what I was going to do. And I had also started to try to date again because I've never been like a, just like a casual dating person. Like I have always just wanted to find my person, find my soulmate, be with them, and make it forever. And I had already failed once, and I was with the wrong person for many, many years, and we did not make each other very happy, but we were afraid of change. And I felt like I was afraid of change in my career, and I was afraid of change in my personal life, in my marriage. And I finally made that change and left that marriage, but I was still like dragging my feet on making the change from, day jobs, steady jobs, safe jobs, to this dream I had of photography, but it seemed so scary, And so I had started, I actually got on Match. So I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but I was 30 and I did not want to, I did not want to casually date. I did not want to just like date a bunch of people and, see where it goes. I got on Match, like with very clear bullet points in my profile about, where I stood. I was looking for a serious relationship. I was looking for marriage. I want to have kids. I want to build a life together, and I don't want to play games. And so I was actually only on Match for like a week, and the first message I responded to ended up being my husband today. And that was a God thing too. I truly feel like he brought us together when we were both ready to be with each other. He had been in an almost decade-long marriage that was unhappy. I had been in a decade-long marriage that was unhappy. And neither of us had kids, and we just wanted a second chance at finding the right person that God meant for us to be with, and the person that made us happy. And so I found Michael, and he sent me a message, and we started messaging together. And I mean, in 2 weeks, I knew that he was the one. Like, I fell in love in 2 weeks, and I absolutely 100% knew that, like, he was the one for me. And so everything moved really, really quick. I had just moved back. I'd only been back, like, a month or two. And, I met him, and it was right before I turned 31, because I moved back right before I turned 31, and I met him right before I turned 31. We had just started dating when I turned 31, and he took me out for my birthday. It's crazy to think back how long that's been. But I met him, and it was like a whirlwind. We fell in love. I moved in right away because we were not wanting to waste time. We just wanted to move forward and build our life together. And so I moved in with him, and I was trying to figure out, what I was going to do when my severance package ended, and I wouldn't have any more income coming in, because I cannot be a person that doesn't work. I just can't do it. I grew up too poor to let myself ever do that. So I just always felt like I had to be working. I had to be contributing. And I was like, what am I going to do? I can't like just let him work and me do photography and just hoping that it will like pan out. And he like right away was like, you just need to go for it. Go for photography. And so I decided to try that during my severance months, just shoot full time and see what it could do for me. But I was still really scared. So I did end up getting another job in oil and gas. And it was just for the small oil and gas office here in Norman. And again, it was right back to where I was before. I was not happy. I did not love going to work every day, but it was safe, and that's what I thought that I needed, was just something safe. And I was there, I would say, gosh, probably not even 6 months. And we were pregnant with Ophelia. We had started trying for her and it happened pretty quickly. So I was pretty excited about that because I was 31, so it was a little bit scary for me having kids later in life. And I didn't want to wait any longer than I had to. So I just decided, like, I'm ready. Like, he's the one. We knew it and we didn't want to waste any time, so we started trying and we got pregnant with Ophelia right away. And I knew as soon as I was pregnant with Ophelia, like, it was the final nudge, like, in my heart and my mind of, like, this is not where you want to be. This is not where you want to be. When you have this baby, you do not want to be going to a job, every single day and taking this baby to daycare. This is not for you. This is not what's going to make you happy and serve your life. So I quit that job very scarily. I don't know, that's not a word, but I quit that job with a lot of hesitation, but also at the same time with a lot of assurity. I knew, even though it was scary, it was 100% the right thing to do. And the other driving factor behind that decision was Michael had been telling me ever since we first got together, you love photography. Just do photography. Why are you working this oil and gas job? Why are you working for this boss you don't even like? Why are you there? Do what you love. And I think that was probably just the first time in my life that somebody that I was with just, like, completely 100% believed in me and was telling me without hesitation, do it. I've got you. And I did it. And so that was the big change. I got pregnant with Ophelia and it was like a light clicked on. And I was like, photography is what's going to give me what I want in our life together. I want something where I can have a flexible schedule. I can make my own schedule. I can run my own business. I can be home with my daughter and I can be home with my husband, and we can make our schedules work around each other so that we don't need daycare, because I grew up in daycare and I didn't love it. And so I just wanted to be home with my babies, but I still wanted to work. I still wanted to contribute. I still wanted to have something that was mine. And so I did it. I went for photography full time. And so from that point, before that, I had just been dabbling. I had been shooting evenings and weekends, just when I had clients or when I had a model for an idea that I had, because I was always, like, trying to do creative shoots because it just really filled that creative void in me. So I started hitting it much harder because I didn't have a day job anymore. So it went from just like, hey, do you want to do a shoot, to like, I am scheduling shoots. I'm shooting my family, I'm shooting my cousins, I'm shooting my sisters, I'm doing all of their family shoots, and I'm doing people's headshots. And I was shooting boudoir sessions for friends of mine who were, getting married, and they needed a boudoir session, like, to gift their spouses. And so I was just booking everything I could. I was booking things at a discount. I was shooting things for free because I knew that the more that I shot, the better I would get. And the more I shot, the more work I would have to post. And at the time, I didn't even have a professional Facebook page. It was just my personal Facebook page. But I started just posting my work on there, and then eventually opened an actual business Facebook page. And that's how I built my business. I never had a website. I would just constantly post my work, like, all the time. And I just started getting more and more bookings through word of mouth because I had a style. I had a signature style that I kind of built from shooting part-time, the way I edited and the way I shot, and I did family work. So I did all outdoor work when I first started. And then those first few years, I shot a lot of headshots, and I was shooting them, like, outside downtown, and things like that. And I was shooting boudoir sessions in my spare room in our house. And I did all that for a few years, and it worked because I was shooting evenings and weekends while my husband did his construction job in the day. So I would be at home with Ophelia all day long. And then we had the twins 18 months later, by the way. So it really was a whirlwind. of change, but we just knew we wanted to build this life together. So we had Ophelia, and then 18 months later, we had the twins, and I was still just shooting, doing evenings and weekends so that I could be home with them during the day while Michael was at work. So when he would get home from work, I would pretty much pack up my stuff, get ready to go, and I would go shoot evening sessions and weekend sessions all the time. And I got really steady. So I was pretty much gone every weekday evening and weekend evenings too. And I did that for the first few years, and that's what kind of built my business. And I got really steady, and obviously photography had become my full-time job. And I think like the first couple years that I did it full time, I remember adding up everything on my little Excel sheet, and I was like, Michael, I made like $18,000 like just doing this, like just doing photography. And it was like such a proud moment for me. And then the next year was a little more, and the next year was a little more, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing it. Like this is my life. I am a professional photographer, and I am making a full income shooting, and I'm home with my babies, and we don't have daycare, and I am, getting to spend, like time with my babies, watching them grow up every day. And I was really happy. But at the same time, I knew that like family photography and outdoor photography was not where my true passion lied. But again, it was paying the bills. So I never wanted to make the switch. I never wanted to move from outdoor natural light photography to studio, like things you see on the cover of Vogue, studio setups and stuff like that. I really wanted to do it because that's where my passion is, because I've always been in love with fashion. And I love, like, I have subscribed to Vogue since I was like 19 years old, because I just love like everything about the fashion world. And I would, at the time I would have loved to shoot that way, but that's not what was paying the bills. And it was a scary thought to kind of transition, because I had just built this business. I had just made this photography business a success, and I was making, $30,000 a year and then $40,000 a year. And it was like, I felt steady. I felt secure. I wasn't rich, but I was making enough money to where we didn't have to put the kids in daycare, and I was able to work and be home with them. But the thing that was bothering me is that I was gone every evening and, weekend evenings too. So even though I was there with my babies in the day, I wasn't there with my husband in the evenings, and I wasn't there, making memories with them all together with us as a family, because we had to tag team, being with the kids. And so it got me thinking, like, what can I do to kind of change this? Because I don't want to be a successful photographer if that means that I never get to spend time with my kids, and I never get to shoot the things that I know that I would love most. So I started following a few photographers on social media, and I was following one. Her name is Kate White. She's in Canada, I believe. And she started posting like all of these beautiful portraits, and she was like, I do most of these shots with one light, and it's so easy. I do this or I do that. And like, I think she even said she used like a sheer shower curtain as like a diffuser on her light or something. And I was just like, okay, if she can create these beautiful images with just one light, I'm sure I can find a light that I can afford and do that. And so that was my first step. She really made me fall even more in love with studio style work. And I felt like I was comfortable enough with the money I was making with my outdoor shoots and my headshots and things like that, I was shooting boudoir in my, in our home. I had a spare room here, and we literally set it up like a boudoir space, and I would just shoot all my boudoir sessions here in the spare room, which is right around that corner. And so I was already doing that. And boudoir I super loved, and I still shoot it today because I love it so much. But that was the only indoor shooting I was really doing. And I was like, I got to go for this. So I decided to buy a light. and I just started doing some research. I got in some groups on Facebook that were talking about lighting and like different gear and different brands. And I ended up picking a light. I just bought a single light, one light and one umbrella, and I set it up in my living room. I had one of my favorite models come over because I had always shot her. Oh, I keep hitting this mic. I always shot her for my outdoor sessions. She's such a great model, and I actually still use her for all of my online courses. She's always my model for those. But I brought her in. I set up my light in my living room, and I literally had to roll up my carpet, roll up my rug out of the way, push my sofa all the way back, move all my kids' toys out of the way, and then set up my light and set up my backdrop. So that's literally what I did, how I started. I bought that light, I bought the umbrella, I bought a backdrop stand, and I bought a seamless backdrop roll from Savage. And I set it up in my living room, and I brought Krista over and I shot her. And again, it's just like one of those moments, when you just know, like, you are where you're supposed to be. And as soon as I shot that studio session, I was like, this is it. Like, this is it for me. This is what I'm going to be doing. And so I started posting her session. And then I had a couple of maternity clients who we had planned to do outdoor sessions for. And I sent them some inspo pics from Pinterest. And I was like, how would you feel about, trying a studio style session? And I got a couple of them who were like totally down for it. One of them, she was also a photographer. And so she was really down for it because it was just such a cool creative idea. When here in Oklahoma at that time, because this was still several years ago, outdoor photography was like really all that was happening in Oklahoma City. Like, some people did studio work, but it wasn't like a huge thing. Not all the photographers were doing it. And still today, a lot of them don't do it because studio sessions are more intimidating if you don't know how to work with lighting. And I was just starting out. So of course I was still intimidated. I was still learning as I was going, but I knew that it was what I wanted to do. So I did a few sessions, started posting those, and they picked up like right away. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, how beautiful. So cool. It like looks like something that could be in New York. And I was like, yep, that's it, because I'd always want to be a fashion designer. I'd always wanted to move to New York and live there in, a high rise and like be in the city and around all the fashion and the culture and everything. So when people started connecting my work to like, oh, this looks like something from New York, I was like, oh, this like a match made in heaven. This is totally for me. This is what I should be doing. And so I had a good friend of mine, Sam, who was one of my regular models as well. And she just happened to be pregnant when I was first starting this whole lighting journey. And I was like, hey, can I do a shoot of you? And she was like, yeah, sure. Because she was down for whatever. She would do any idea I ever asked her to do. And she's freaking gorgeous. She would look good in a trash bag standing in a dumpster. Like, she's that gorgeous. And so I was just like, I'm going to pack up my stuff and I'm going to come to your living room and set up. And the night before her session, I put together this dress and I sewed these arm pieces and I used this like tulle skirt as a train, and I just got this whole outfit idea together the night before her session. And the second that I finished that session and I was looking at the images, it was like a dopamine rush. It was like, I cannot believe that I just created this. I cannot believe that I just shot this. Like, what is going on right now? This is going to be my future. This is it. This is what I'm shooting. And because I'd done a couple of studio sessions already and I was already loving them, but I had never done maternity until I shot Sam's, and then I shot that other photographer, and like they were all really close together. And it was just like this huge, just like feeling that like almost knocked me down of like, this was where I was meant to be. This is where I thrive. This studio work, this editorial vibe, this modern vibe, this is me. I love it. And so I edited that session. I posted that session. And it just was like a light went off for me and for everybody who followed me, everybody who knew my work. And once they saw these pictures, they started sharing them with everybody. And that first maternity session is to this day the session that people who book me that's the session they send me as inspiration. And they always say, like, this is why I booked you. I love this session. I want this session. I love this vibe. And you're the only one here that does anything like this. And I still get that to this day. And I've been shooting studio sessions for several years now. And I still get that all the time, that first session. And so that's why it was such like a huge epiphany in my business when I did that. So part of this very long-winded part 2 of my brand story is to tell you guys, when you find what you love, you just have to go for it, because I had no idea how to do studio lighting. I had no idea what I was doing. I literally was just looking on YouTube and looking at the photographers that I follow that were talking about how they shoot, and I was just piecing information together to create my lighting setup. And luckily for me, it was an easier setup to do, and it worked really well. And it was just like one lighting technique that I could do at the time, but it was so beautiful. Everybody loved it. And from that session, and I just kept posting it, and then shot the other few sessions that I had planned and started posting those, and everybody instantly was like, I want to book, I want to book, I want to book. And it was like a flood of bookings all of a sudden. And I had always stayed pretty steady with my outdoor stuff, but it was like a flood of the indoor stuff. And I started shooting studio sessions every week, and I was shooting in my living room right around this corner. I was shooting in that living room, and I had my kids' toys all over the place. Nobody cared. My dressing room was my boudoir studio room, with the guest bathroom attached to it. Nobody cared. I was shooting while my twins were napping in this room. This office used to be where my twins napped. And then my daughter would nap in the boudoir room when I wasn't shooting. I had a crib in there. And I would shoot in the living room during their nap time every day. So I would do one shoot a day from like 12 to 2, because that was when they napped. And that's how I started building the studio lighting side of my business. And it was just like a seamless transition, because I just loved it so much. I loved that kind of shooting. So I loved editing it, because I was so excited after I shot it. And then everybody that saw the work here in Oklahoma City, it was just so different than what everybody was seeing. Like all the outdoor stuff here was really popular, and hardly anybody was doing indoor stuff, especially indoor, like high fashion Vogue style stuff. And so it just like picked up really quickly. And so I started booking every week. I would have at least 2 to 3 sessions during the day. And then I was still going and shooting an evening session a few times a week too, to keep my business steady, because I never wanted to, stop the outdoor shooting until the indoor shooting got really successful. So it was just kind of a slow balance and transition from doing both the studio and the outdoor shooting. And then, as the indoor shooting, got more and more, the outdoor shooting got less and less. And then now, I've transitioned fully to just studio work. I don't even shoot outside anymore, which was my ultimate goal, because I don't love outdoor sessions, and I never loved shooting families. I just did it because that's what everybody wanted here. And I was good at it, and I didn't mind it, but it wasn't where my passion was. It wasn't like what filled my cup up. And when I started doing studio lighting work, that just completely filled my cup, and I knew that I just couldn't go back to doing outdoor shooting anymore. So I just shoot in the studio. So that was the big change for me, was learning studio lighting. That's really what built my business, because my business was steady, and it was, on the lower end. I think I was making like those first few years between I think it gradually got up from like 18,000 to like, 38,000. But then when I started incorporating studio lighting into my sessions, my income almost doubled within 2 years. And 2 years is not a long time for an income to double. And it was just like all the signs were pointing to like, this is where you need to be, this is what you need to be doing, and this is how you need to build the rest of your business. And so that's how I took my business from a steady, safe, business to a thriving, successful business. And the best part about it is now I don't have to shoot evenings and weekends anymore, because I don't have to shoot outside ever again. And I just shoot all of my studio work during the day, during the week while my kids are at school. And I have the schedule that I had dreamed of for all of those years. So this part two is really about like the journey that I took to get there, learning studio lighting, sticking with it, posting consistently, and word of mouth, and staying true to the style that I love, and incorporating fashion into it as much as I could. And, I even learned fabric draping, which made my sessions even more beautiful and made people want to book me even more. So that was it. That was the big change, learning studio lighting. And it took me from, what I would say was safe and steady to super successful and thriving and like the happiest I've ever been in my business. So if you stayed here for this much, then hopefully you will stick around for part three, because that is where I kind of tell you basically where I am now and why I feel like I can help you, and why I feel like it was worth creating this channel to have this connection with you guys, to share my knowledge. So please stick around and watch part three when you can, which hopefully will be right now.